All right, welcome in everybody this sad Monday morning to Science and Kirk presents In the Nest, and we got Bruce Laird on the air with me doing the post game of pretty much of just a bad day at the park for the Ravens. I don't know how else to put it. They were beaten in every way you could be beaten, and 41-17 is definitely Lamar's worst loss that he's ever suffered. Bruce, your summary of the game quickly, and then we'll go into
Well,
detail.
as we get into the season, let me explain that this league is based on 12 teams that make the playoffs. Out of those 12, there's 8 really qualified teams that make the playoffs each and every year. What we're seeing now is that the situation has changed a little bit in the AFC North. Cincinnati came in here. They've been beaten 5 straight times by John Harbaugh, and 3 of those years have been with Lamar Jackson. And they get into a game where it's so evident to me now, Bruce, that the Baltimore Ravens consistently cannot get to the passer with a 4-man rush. So they're very aggressive, and they were very aggressive in this ball game in the first 30 minutes. But at the end of the day, when you watch the LA Raiders and you watch other football teams, the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, that stayed in their 4-man front with a 4-man rush and were able to get at least three and a half sacks versus a 4-man rush without any pressure. This is what you're seeing now. You're really seeing the situation has become that Lamar Jackson is so sensational. He's brought us to this point. But let me make my point to you before we get into this game. This is the best 30 minutes of football I've seen the Ravens and the opponent play in 4 weeks. We start with the Lions, Denver, the Colts, and LA. 4 football teams that didn't show up, can't win. They may win 6 games this year. And now you have Cincinnati Bengals. And after 30 minutes, they put it to them, Bruce. And you can't describe another game of 500 plus yards. How many games have the Ravens given up 300 yards passing in their first 6 weeks? I don't know. But another 416 yards passing. It's remarkable. It's remarkable where they are, but understand, I'm not a fan. I'm an analyst. I look at everything. I look at this game and go, why after 6 or 7 weeks, blown coverages, people not going to where they're supposed to go. I don't understand it, and I'll never understand it. It just doesn't happen in a good football team.
All right, Bruce, a couple things. Number one, you comment on this, all right? To me, the Ravens are lucky to have been 5-1. They were lucky to beat the Lions. The comeback against the Colts was a downright miracle, all right? And perhaps without Lamar Jackson, I'm not sure what record this team would have, all right? It would be pretty darn bad, correct?
Correct.
So maybe like today, the breaks like kind of even out. They got all the Bengals got all the calls. They definitely outplayed us, and it was like a statement. Ravens, you're not that great of a team. You're a good team, but you're not that great of a team. Do you agree with that?
Oh, no, totally. And as you get into the final half of the season, and this is their first, if I'm not mistaken, this is their first division game, and they're home against the Cincinnati Bengals, and we all get it. Joe Burrows is a special guy. There's teams in this league, and I'll get back to this, Bruce, again. There's 24 teams that are what they are, and you'll see them each and every year. And the 8 elite actually make it, but there's 12 get to the playoffs. And we're just going to see what happens. But the mental and the physical mistakes of not tackling. Listen, I played 14 years of professional football. Every coach, defensive coach, said to me, if you want to tackle, you will tackle. It's an inner gift. It's what you do. And you must commit yourself to getting the man on the ground. The Ravens in this first six games now, or 7 games now, they're not tackling, and they're blowing coverages, which should never happen at this stage of your professional career and this late into a season. Over and over, people wide open, no one taking care of business. And maybe you can comment on this, Bruce. I mean, where are the Ravens defensively? I mean,
they're not very good, and they are. Listen, you're missing your main playmaker. All right, Marcus Peters, but he's been out the whole year. You have to adjust to that. But here's my question to you: Marlon Humphrey got taken to school today. All right, Jamar Chase was too much for him to handle. There's nothing wrong with that. Jamar Chase is a generational talent. He's fantastic. Somewhere along the line, don't you think they should have given Marlon Humphrey some help with him? Because the guy killed us. 201 yards, Bruce. 201 yards. Where was the help for? Where was the help for Marlon Humphrey on the kid?
I'm going to get back to this point I made just earlier. They cannot consistently get to the passer with a 4-man rush. So Wink gets it, he understands it, and he sends 5 and 6 almost constantly, which puts you in at a 5-man rush. You can probably play coverage, and you can actually double number 1 if you choose to. But he chooses to put his people in those situations because he knows if he's laying out in a 4-man rush, it will just be a slower death.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, great players have bad games.
Look,
Humphrey had a bad game.
I'll never criticize Marlon Humphrey, but he was beaten today. So what? Everybody, you play as many games as he does. Eventually, you're gonna have a bad day and get beat. And today was that day. You mentioned something about 12 good teams, and then you have the rest. Well, I have to tell you something. There's some really bad teams this year, and I think that this is beyond being not a good team. But the Bears, all right, the Texans, they're beyond bad, Bruce. They're beyond bad. And the Lions are 0-7. And the Redskins, the Washington football team is horrible. And the Eagles are horrible. This is it's like 2 levels. When in the last time did you see a team be an 18-point favorite and still cover in the NFL? That doesn't happen, does it?
No. And this is what we're talking about. So we looked at the last month of what the Baltimore Ravens were able to do. And you mentioned yourself, some of it's quite lucky. The Indianapolis Colts up 27 and end up losing because their defense is a shell of itself and lets you go. So before we meet, all right, before we meet a 4-2 football team, here's what happens. We play the Lions, we play Denver, we play Colts, we play the LA Chargers, who never even left LA. They may have eventually got to Baltimore. I don't know what they did at night, but they certainly didn't get up and play. A team that put on 47 against their opponent the week before and totally pooped the bed. And then you have 30 great minutes of football. I tell you what, I was so excited after watching Lions, Denver, Colts, LA, Chargers play the Ravens. I go, now I'm looking at two football teams. And God, what an excitement of 30 minutes. Back and forth, people putting points on the board. They come back, you come back. And then the second half happens. And wow, what an embarrassment. What an embarrassment for the Baltimore Ravens at home to just get trumped like that.
Yeah.
And they got schooled. They got schooled, Bruce, in every way possible.
I think John Harbaugh would agree with you. It was a disastrous second half. Of course, nobody was there to see the fourth quarter. Burrow threw for 416 yards in 3 quarters in 3 minutes because they could have scored another 3 touchdowns if they wanted to. We could not stop them. And I said to a couple of my friends at halftime that Burrow, give him credit, he was doing whatever he wanted. All right. And when they kept calling timeout to get the ball back with a minute and a half left, they knew that they could score at will, and they did. And, the Ravens got the first touchdown of the second half. They went down and got 4. All right. John Harbaugh said afterwards, he said he's been preaching this all year, and he was his usual abrupt self in the post game. And you can't blame him, okay? But he said, I've said it, I mean it. This is a week-to-week league. You can't worry about what you did the week before, beating the Chargers 41-14. And if you think that you're that good, you're going to get it taken to you by a good team.
There's no question. As a player, as an NFL player, Mondays were very, very special to everybody. The coaching staff, as they use it as teaching items, all the plays, every play looked at numerous times. What you have to do is learn from that and know the next week is the next week and get ready to play and play at a high level and understand that nothing is ever given to you. I mean, my major concern is, first of all, Lamar's come into his own passing the football. I mean, you got Andrews, number 89. You got Hollywood, number 5. You're seeing that can happen each and every game to make you big plays and get you back in ball games. But if your defense cannot tackle, cannot align itself, cannot handle assignments and do their job first, that's what you get. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. After 2 years of exciting offensive football, what they're discovering is when your defense is that bad, you cannot overcome it. You cannot overcome it, Bruce. I talk about the great New England Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Their defense was never, ever qualified or in the top 10 or 12 defenses in the league. They were in the middle of the pack. They played solid defense because their offense was putting up 28, 32, 34 a game, and they were able to survive that. And you look at that, you go back in history and look at Belichick and his defensive stats on all his winning teams. They were never great because they didn't have to be. What you have to do is play team defense and tackle the ball carrier.
Yeah, there's no doubt. But let's look at another side of today, and I'll get your opinion. People don't realize they're getting panicking today and blaming Harbaugh because he went forward on a couple fourth downs deep in our own territory, as if what was he going to do? Forfeit the game? But Bruce, it's one game in a 17-game season. Did anybody really think the Ravens were a 16-1 team? If they did, they're not watching the same team that we've all been watching. They've struggled to
No, of
win.
course.
They've struggled to win their 5 games, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're a team that knows how to win, but not today. Today was just not their day, and perhaps it was long overdue. But what the heck? They got to forget about it. You can't let one loss lead to another. Calais Campbell said that afterwards. You got a game in 2 weeks against Minnesota. Then you go play the Dolphins, who are absolutely pathetic. And then you play the Bears. I mean, righteously so. Should they not be 8-2 at the end of that run?
Well, if you look at who they play, you're absolutely probably right. The emotional situation of a bye and getting beat 41-17. We'll see how. And Harbaugh's been a great coach when it comes to success and adversity. I really think it's harder to coach a team that's successful. I really do, because you got the ebb and flows, you got all the personalities, you got stuff. I mean, adversity, you can pry on things. You can, as some of the great coaches and all of NFL have used adversity as the biggest twang, to get to his players and get the best out of them. But we will see what happens, because, as you say, some of these teams we talk about, and then you got Miami, and then you got the other football team we're going to play. Minnesota's going to be a good football team. We're going to have the bye. We'll see how it all turns out.
Yeah, address 2 things. Number one, I think the first takes that we've had on Rashad Bateman are pretty darn good. I mean, he's got good hands. He gets the yak, or he gets the yards
Yeah.
after the catch. And this is a rookie. Have to be impressed with him, Bruce, aren't you?
Yeah, no question. I think we got to put him. I think we got to use him more. But it's hard to do that. You only have really, Bruce, you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and very little bit of Saturday now in the new league. So you have 3 days of practice. How are you going to fit them in? How are you going to take receptions away from Andrews and Hollywood? That's hard to do, because they produce, and Lamar is probably very, very comfortable with them. But the young kid is got to be a part of the second half of this football team, no question.
Look, we take Lamar's legs out off this team, and basically right now there's no running game. The halfbacks, I mean, they're not getting the job done. There's no nicer way of putting it. The only thing they're not doing is turning the ball over, which is important. But Devontae Freeman and Le'Veon Bell and Latavius Murray, they're not getting the job done, Bruce, and there's not much they can do now. In other words, you're midway through the season. You can't keep fishing guys off the heap and hoping it's going to work out. What plans for the offense do you have going forward here? Is it going to be more throwing from Lamar? I mean, look, Lamar had 88 yards today rushing, and he had a 50-yard run taken away from him. So,
On the
which
whole,
really,
yeah.
right, which really ended the game. All right, to be honest with you, cost us 60 yards, probably a touchdown, and that was that. But what do you do with the rushing game when you don't have one?
Well, you got to. Here's what happens, man. You got to go with what the doctor ordered, and that's what they got. That's what they have. That's what they're going to have at this time of the season. You're not finding anybody. Le'Veon Bell was just a wish list, and he's never. I mean, he was done 2 years ago, in my humble opinion. But it is what it is. You're just going to have to go with it. And Lamar, thank God we have Lamar, because I liked your comment a segment ago when you just said, if we don't have Lamar in this football team, what will we be? 1-6, 2-5? I don't know. Somewhere close to that, though.
No, no doubt. And now let's get to the subject that the rumors are flying right now that in the bye week period that the Ravens are going to extend Lamar. I don't know if you've heard it or heard anything about it, but apparently in the vicinity of 6 years, 250 million. That's 41 million and change a year, less than Mahomes, less than Josh Allen from Buffalo, but certainly a substantial amount of money. Is it time to get this done?
I think so. I mean, why not? I think he's proven himself in the first 6 or 7 games. I don't think he has anything more to throw out there. I think the Ravens know that that's the guy, and they followed it, and they're going to go with it. So why not
Last
do it?
last year, the Ravens. Here's a good stat for you. The Ravens beat Cincinnati last year in the aggregate score for 2 games, 65-6. All right. And in my mind, when I heard so many prognosticators saying, look out for the Bengals today, they got a darn good chance of winning. How do you go from beating the team twice by 62 points to getting absolutely destroyed today in your home field? It doesn't seem possible, does it?
No, it doesn't. But as you mentioned, Bruce, this is a very, very fickle league. Harbaugh has come right out and said, I coach and I believe it's a week to week league. And I believe that too. But I don't believe it for the other 24 teams that play each and every Sunday. As you say, they're awful. Will they win 4 to 5 or 6 games? Probably so, because out of the 24 that are out there playing each and every one of themselves, that's what it's going to be. And we shall see how it progresses. And
Question.
it's going to be an interesting. I never had a bye week in my career, so I wasn't up to that. But as I see that, I don't know if it's a blessing or a weakness when you get just handled like that, and then you go about and you got 4 or 5 days off and you're doing your own thing. How do you come back from that? I think it's individual players, obviously. I mean, coaching can only do so much, but you're going to have to look in the mirror long and hard and then try and figure out, especially defensively, what this football team is going to be in the next 10 weeks.
Listen, final question. You're Kirk Cousins, all right, quarterback of Minnesota. Now you've watched Carson Wentz decimate the secondary, right? And now today you watch Joe Burrow double decimate the secondary. You're Kirk Cousins. Are you licking your chops to get to Baltimore in front of the whole nation and do it again?
I hope so. I mean, he's going to believe in himself. Obviously, he's been around a long time. He gets it. He knows the deficiencies there. The linebacker core at times plays very well for the Ravens, but in pass coverage, they just get lost. I mean, they blitz, and when you blitz, Bruce, everybody has a man. Everybody has a man, although you're blitzing. So I don't know which linebacker it was. I played it back 2 or 3 times. I couldn't find the linebacker that covered 34 of the Bengals. And he goes for 35 or something, a big play on a dog. And here's my point to you, which is amazing to me. When you're in zone, I get it. You got crossing patterns, you got play action, you get caught up. When you're man-to-man, Bruce, when you're man-to-man, everybody knows I have that guy. Whoever that guy is, that's my coverage, okay? I line up, I have that guy. Think about it. And this is professional football. I'm not talking about Gilman playing St. Paul.
Right.
And it's just, it blows my mind, man.
Well, that 87, the tight end, I can't pronounce his name, but had 2 touchdowns where he where he was absolutely wide open. And I watched the second one and nobody covered him. Now,
There you
to
go.
me, somebody responsible for that? If they see a
Bruce,
guy not being covered?
every and the Baltimore Ravens, obviously, because I mentioned early in the program, consistently they can't get to the passer with a four-man rush. Now they have at times, don't get me wrong, I'm just saying consistently, where you can line up 80% of the time, send four people, and believe you can get a quarterback off the spot, throw early, sack them, or whatever it is. And they do it over and over again. What do you do from Wednesday to Saturday to be that incompetent? I don't understand it.
Well, it's funny, Bruce. I'll wrap it up on this. When I looked at the game, I looked at one stat. I always look at that stat sheet, and I saw one stat where the score was 6-1. Cincinnati had 6 sacks, and the Ravens had one. And I think at the end of the day, that tells the story of this game, that the Ravens were just unable to get to Burrow. Give him credit. He moved out. He got rid of the ball just in time, but one sack, and Cincinnati had 6 sacks. And I guarantee you, we blitzed a whole lot more than Cincinnati did. All right. And
Oh, I mean, believe me, from the first snap to the end of to the last 6 minutes of the game, we sent 5 and 6. I think maybe 12, 15 snaps of the entire game that we sent 4 after Burrow. And there's your telling secret right there, Bruce.
yeah,
That's it.
it is. But, for everybody listening out there, don't get down. It's one game out of 17. John
Yep.
Harbaugh's always been able to adapt. He's always been able to recover. I don't know if Eric DeCosta is going to be out there hitting the waiver wire or whatever. He's got 2 weeks. Maybe you'll find another running back. I don't know. But, pretty soon in the secondary, they'll be looking for Bruce Laird or Ed Reed. All right.
Well, I tell you,
I just know you want to let that tight end get all alone, no matter what.
Eddie is sorely missed, and for the running game, I'm definitely sorely missed because your strong safety's got to be able to tackle, and the linebackers in secondary, their tackling has just been, I can only say atrocious, to be nice.
Hey, 7 games, we're 5-2. The world's not coming to an end. We're still in a great position, tied for the division lead. Forget this game. Worry about Minnesota. Make your adjustments. And they get a week off to get healthy, which I think is crucial. And hopefully McCary is not hurt. All right, although you hear that word ankle and you get scared to death. But let's hope that it goes that way. But anyway, Bruce, thanks so much for coming on as always.
All right,
And
appreciate it.
we'll give you the week off unless you want to come on and talk some football next week. That's up to you. But
Yeah.
You'll definitely be back when the Ravens play Minnesota in 2
Correct.
weeks. Have a great day, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
All right, this is Bruce Posner. We'll be back in a few minutes here on WNST Baltimore Positive for Science at Kirk presents In the Nest.